Hi, I'm a child psychiatrist, parent coach, and I'm also a mum. And today I'm talking about balancing the needs of children of different ages because it's a question I get asked a lot in the community group. If I've got children of very different ages, especially got, two or three, how do I actually do that? They all need my time. We often talk about presents, like how is it possible, especially we've got quite a few different children. And this is exactly what I'm going to talk about today. And of course, if you do want some more specific information or, bring some questions, please do come to the community group. It's a free Facebook group. We do lives there. It's a great place to ask questions. So please do come along to that. I'd love to answer specific questions from people who are watching my videos. And of course, please do sign up for the email list because there are now more free videos available with that. And also, you get everything into your inbox every week so you don't miss any blog articles or videos. So let's talk about balancing the needs of children of different ages. I think the big thing with managing children of different ages is really thinking about prioritizing things. When you have several kids, you're no longer just thinking about individuals, you're also thinking about the bigger system. And it's thinking, how do I make the whole system kind of safer and appropriate for everyone? And where does every child fit in with that? And I guess that's exactly what I'm going to talk about. So, the first thing, thinking about specifically the safe base, there needs to be a safe base for everyone in the house, not just for one of the siblings or two of them, but all of them. And if one sibling is always fighting with another, then actually the home is not a safe place for either of them, really. And because the safe base is so important, I think if kids don't feel physically safe anywhere, especially in the house, it's just something that really affects their general, state of mind and their mood and how they're feeling in themselves. So if you got to a point where they're not feeling safe because they're always fighting, then really that's got to be a priority. You can kind of, the other things have got to step to the side and you've got to think with them about how you are going to bring down the fighting. How are you going to make sure that they're not going to be fighting, and really put some energy into that, because unfortunately with things like that you do need a lot of persistence, you do need to keep working at it. And therefore it's just about prioritizing that at least sort of for a couple of weeks and just focusing all your energies on working with them, reflecting with them when they do have fights, breaking those up, and again thinking with them, how is this going to stop, so that they understand that this is not acceptable in the house, this is not going to be happening in the house, and it's really just not okay. And I think with something like this, putting time in, sort of preempting things, so actually having a sit down discussion with the siblings before anything is happening, not after the event, but knowing that this has been going on already, setting a time aside to actually speak to them and say, okay, I've noticed there's been a lot of fights. This is not on. How we're going to resolve this is a lot better than trying to debrief everyone afterwards, because you can get into all sorts of cycles if you're constantly debriefing and spending time with different kids. They can get a bit competitive about who you spend the most time with. But if you're actually trying to preempt it, you've got all the relevant kids in the room and you're talking to them about what's going on, about how it's going to change, then that's a much better use of your time. Of course, you will be really good at knowing what different things work for your kids, and I'm thinking about sensitivity here. You will know different things they like, how they function best, what really works for them. But between themselves, your siblings may not be as aware of what their siblings like, or what works for them, or what is difficult for them. So again, the focus here is not on maybe you being sensitive, but in really nurturing that sensitivity in all of the siblings in your family, so they can be sensitive to each other, because that will mean you don't have to be the only one doing the sort of sensitivity and the awareness. Because actually, if you are raising your children to be sensitive of each other, that means you'll probably have to pay less attention to that part of it, because it is really hard to accommodate everyone and to always be in charge of accommodating everyone. Whereas if you can get the siblings on board with that, then it's something that is just going to become a much easier job for you to do. And the way you can do that is just to talk very openly in front of siblings that, oh, my daughter, like, she prefers, this, and actually, well, he prefers that. So they just become, it's just something that gradually builds up in their mind, that they build a profile for each of their siblings and about how in your family you accommodate those needs. What is it that you actually do? Not just knowing what it is, but what do you actively do to accommodate that or to make sure that they have what they need? Because actually that's the kind of thing, often siblings are really great at knowing, their other brothers and sisters, but it's actually what do they do to make things easier for them. When it comes to boundaries and frameworks, depending on your ages of your children, of course, some of the boundaries will be different. For example, bedtime might be different for different children. But I think it's important that there's some boundaries that are universal. There's some expectations that are just universal for all of them. It might be an expectation that there's no physical aggression in the house. It might be an expectation that people don't shout at each other in the house, or there might be an expectation that they all, get ready for school independently, for example, or something like that. But it's really good if there's some blanket ones, because that will mean that they feel they're not singled out. There's just some rules that are blanket rules and everyone has to adhere to them. And it might be that even you have to adhere to them because actually it's something, like no phones at the table, for example, or those kinds of things, because it kind of makes them feel like no one is being prioritized over anyone else. Of course, for the boundaries and expectations that are slightly different dependent on age, it's helpful if the younger siblings can understand how they get to that age. Is it, is the boundary based on age only? Is there something around them being able to do something else? If it's more like an independence thing or access to stuff on the internet, is that just about age, or is that when you've demonstrated that you can do something safely, for example? So it's helpful that they understand what is it that qualifies them for the next step, because obviously often younger siblings really want whatever the older siblings have, and knowing what gets them there. Is it just a matter of time and you have to wait, or is there something they can do to get there? It can just be really helpful. So it's fair, and any siblings that are coming after them also know that that's how you get to that stage. And one of the things you can do is actually get kids in making sure those boundaries happen. And that includes for you, like if it is a boundary like no phones at the table, that actually one of your kids can say to you, you've got your table, you've got your phone on the table. No, that's not on. Because it'll kind of help them to feel it's not just you doing that. It's not just coming from you. It's something that everyone is kind of responsible for, and having those boundaries helps everyone function together in a busy household where lots of different things are happening. It's something that helps everyone to get on. I think nurture is the hardest one, because it is important that each child does get some individual time with you. And of course, depending on the number of children you have, it might not be that frequently, but in a way it doesn't matter as long as it's predictable. It depends on what you do, depends on whether you work and what kind of time you have for yourself. But do find some regular time with each child. And even if it is, once a week, and that's okay, as long as your child knows that definitely on that evening you spend time with them, and that's how it goes. And on that evening you spend time, with a different child. Sometimes it's linked to extracurricular things that they do, but sometimes it isn't. And I think having some time that's maybe not linked to a specific task is important, because it's almost like time that they spend with you that's kind of more playful, that's important, that that can be guided by them, can be centered on what they want. And it might not be particularly long, but it's still, if it's predictable, if it definitely happens and they know it's coming next, they know when to expect it next, it can make up for the fact that it can't be very long, because you do have to split your time between them. And it might be that you have one child that needs you more. I mean, it might be to do with the fact that they're just smaller and they just need more actual kind of physical care. It might be that they have some specific need. It might be that they have an illness of some kind and they do need your time more. And if you can get the other siblings on board with that and involved in being part of the process of caring, or whatever it is that you have to sort of spend your time doing, then again, it makes them feel part of that. Even if you're not spending as much time with them as you are with the sibling, at least they can kind of be on the front row seat, being part of that, feeling helpful if it is something they can help with. And I think it just leaves them feeling they're not so left out of the whole thing. So these are some of my ideas about how you can use the four essentials to sort of balance the needs of different siblings. Of course, it is a very individual thing. All families are different, all families are individual, and different people have different needs in your family. So it's always difficult to provide very sort of specific ideas, but hopefully there's something in there that you thought, oh, I might try that, and see if I can do that. Please do join the emerging parent community if you've got kind of more specific questions, because then it's much easier to have more time to think about that in the live. Hopefully I will see you soon.